2026 marks 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the creation of a new nation dedicated to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. America's faced many challenges and changes over the past 250 years, and it gives each generation a great story to tell and a rich history to explore. Here in Caldwell County, we have that same rich history and great stories to tell. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to tell you some of the history of Caldwell County and hear from many of our residents who have great stories to tell. Welcome to Caldwell County Today. I'm Paige Counts, Public Information Officer for Caldwell County. Joining me today is Kelly Ervin. Welcome, Kelly.
Well, thank you, Paige. I'm glad to be here.
I am so glad you're here. I'm going to just start by tell me a little bit about yourself and about growing up here in Caldwell County.
I was born here. I was schooled here. I worked here. I've retired here, and I'm still living here. And I'm a native, and my mom was a native of Caldwell County. My dad was a native of Burke County. But this is home.
It's home.
I love it.
You grew up in Doulatown. What was that like when you were a child?
In a word, it was a wonderful life. I mean, for a child, it was an ideal way to grow up. We were secure. We didn't get everything we wanted. We got a lot of it, and we had everything that we need. But the biggest thing about Doulatown was being surrounded by family. You know, everyone was a relative. We had most of us, and I'll say 95% of us, we came from two-parent homes, working class families. We had homes. Mm-hmm. We had yards. We had everything that children need to thrive.
Before we started taping, you were talking about your grandmother being your babysitter. Tell that story to our viewers, because I found it fascinating.
Well, most of the children in Doulatown growing up, there was no need for daycare or anything, because we all had grandmothers or even great-grandmothers or great-aunts, and they kept us during the day while our parents worked. And again, we were with family, mm-hmm. and then surrounded by other cousins or siblings. You know, our grandmothers kind of had things laid out on a schedule that you followed, certain activities for certain ages, and mealtime and nap time, and they stuck to that. The big thing was, usually around 12:30 every day, the soap operas would come on. Mm-hmm. They call them the stories.
The stories, yes.
And at that point, you were either put down for a nap, or if you were a little old for a nap, you would go outside on the front porch and read, or sit there and wait for cars to go by. But it again, that was a wonderful thing too. I never knew about daycares or anything. I went from my grandmother's care to going to school. And
where did you go to school?
Elementary school. I went to the best elementary school in the county, Whitnall Elementary. And at that time, Whitnall was K-8, so I was fortunate enough to be able to attend there until I was going into 8th grade, and it became a K-6 school. Mm-hmm. But wonderful environment there. I had teachers who nurtured me, taught me, would discipline me if I needed it, and our parents backed them up. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget those. Made friends that are still friends today. And that was an ideal learning situation, because Whitnall wasn't a school where you had the very wealthy and the very poor. We were all in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that And I think that was one of the reasons it worked so well. And a lot of our parents knew each other, and they supported our teachers. But my teachers were fabulous. They inspired me to become a teacher. And not many of them are still living today, but I still talk to several of them that taught me. Sherry Tuttle Miller, Sheila White, Lois Michael. They were all my teachers, and they were just, again, they were jewels.
And I imagine because you lived around family that you had cousins in school with you.
Those were the only kids. When it came to our school, the only other black children in our school, we were all cousins. We all came from Doulatown. And the interesting thing about Doulatown, it's divided into two parts. There's the upper end, which is Doulatown Road, where I live, and the lower end, which is Miller Hill Road. And two separate school districts. We were all elementary school was Whitnell School. The older kids went to Hudson High School. On the lower end, you attended Gamewell Elementary School, and then you went on to Gamewell Collettsville High School. So we didn't go to school with our cousins on the lower end of Doulatown, but all of us on the upper end went to school together. And you might say we probably got tired of seeing each other because we were in school together, we were at home together, we were at church together, and you'd like to see someone different. Or meet new people.
Right, but growing up in being surrounded by family, talk about the value in that.
You can't put a value on it. Everyone around you was a relative. They were looking out for you. We had everything. If they had to get on us for something, it didn't matter. You know, if you were in another family member's yard, if you needed to be disciplined, they would do it, and then they'd tell your parents.
And you probably got disciplined again.
Oh yeah. And I felt like at one point I thought, are they all reading the same book and they have a set of rules in them like we have at school that they all follow by?
They probably were all reading the same book, and it was probably the good book.
They were reading that, and then too, most of our parents had grown up together, and the values our grandparents and great-grandparents had taught them, and they were passing that down to us.
That's such a valuable way to grow up, and surrounded by family and loved ones. Where did you go to high school? Did you go to Hudson or?
No, when I was in 7th grade, that was the year that they closed Hudson High, Lenore High, Granite Falls High School, and Gamewell Collettsville High School, and they formed. They combined Lenore High with Gamewell Collettsville and made West Caldwell, and they combined Granite and Hudson High School and formed South Caldwell. And High Brighton was out there.
Right.
But on the side of town we lived on, even though we had gone to Hudson, our neighborhood, we're not 5 minutes from Gamewell.
Right.
So that it was a school change for all of us. I had to go to Gamewell Middle one year and then on to West Caldwell. And I attended West Caldwell for 3 years, and then I transferred to High Brighton. And but kids that were probably just a half a mile from our house, that was South Caldwell's district at the time. And
it's crazy how those lines are drawn, and
it is, and to look at the way that they're drawn now, it's a lot of changes have been made. But the hard thing about it for the Doulatown kids, we lost all of our friends because the majority of our friends went on to South Caldwell, and we were in a new school, new people, and trying to find our way.
That happens when you do the whole changing school lines and changing things, that does take place. But from West Caldwell, you went on to become a teacher. Tell me about your journey from West Caldwell to starting a career in education.
Well, from West Caldwell, my senior year, I went to High Brighton. Loved High Brighton. And when I graduated there, I attended Caldwell Community College for a year or two. Actually, I was majoring in accounting for a while, but then I changed that and went to Lenore Ryan because I always wanted to be a teacher. And that's what I did. And I graduated from Lenore Ryan, and I started teaching. And a few years later, my principal at the time, Keith Heineman, convinced me to go back to grad school with another group of teachers to get our master's, and we did that. Went to App and got our master's degree to teach middle school, and that was my niche. Stayed there 20 years.
At which school?
Gamble Middle School, the middle school I attended.
What was it like to go back and teach in the school you attended? I know you only attended there for 1, maybe 2 years, but
It was like coming home, because when I started, I was teaching the children of a lot of my classmates. I knew the community. I was 5 minutes from home, and I was one of the teachers that when the day was over, I wasn't leaving. I was probably going to go to some activity the kids were having or whatever, because that was home. But I loved it. It was like being with family.
well, I imagine you taught some family members. And
I did.
I mean, when you say coming home, you really were, because you still live in the Doulatown community.
I sure do.
So I imagine that there were some family members came through.
Cousins, and at one point I taught my nephew. But that was the good thing about it too, because you already have relationships there, and the lines of communication are open. And on the other hand, for the student, it may not have made them very happy, because I didn't mind stopping by home after work to drop off homework that was conveniently left at school, or if had to talk to a parent or whatever. I mean, I could do it.
Right. Did you ever think about teaching somewhere else, or because I know in your career some days are better than others?
Well, I taught at a couple of schools prior to going to Gamble Middle, and I actually taught for Hickory City schools for 2 years, and that wasn't home. And I'll just say this, it was a different culture.
I'm sure.
I was so happy to come home to Caldwell County, where I understood the dialect and the people, and coming home to my people.
You were talking earlier that you took over, you did, I don't know if it was a greenhouse or a garden. Tell that story about how you helped children learn they were gardening.
That was my first year at Gamble Middle, and decided, I was teaching math and science, and I decided we were going to do a garden. And we used part of the courtyard at the school, and the wonderful thing is all of our Gamble natives, they knew exactly what to do, because like me, they'd grown up in the summer out in a garden, out in a field doing something, and they were so excited about it. And the kids that didn't know, that lived in town, that didn't exactly know, they were happy to show them.
Right.
We had to show them different things as far as what you use and how you plant it and things like that. But they loved it too. They couldn't wait to get out there daily to check on what we had planted. And then when it was time to harvest our crops. By then they were in 7th grade, but a lot of them, they got a kick out of stopping by that garden and maybe picking a bell pepper or finding a few tomatoes or something that they had planted.
That's awesome.
So hopefully that was a life skill or taught it too.
You also talked about going to a gym show and students bringing back their gyms, maybe when their children came through. I don't know. Tell that story.
The Gem and Mineral Show in Hickory. I started going there really when I was in 5th grade, and Sherry Miller took us Whitnell School, because at that time our assistant principal at the time, Mr. John Frazier, he collected gems, and he was part of the Gem and Mineral Show, and we went to that show, and it was an instant love affair. I started collecting then, and then when I took my own students, same thing happened. The first thing they all wanted to get a grab bag. And the wonderful thing, the grab bags are affordable down there. I think they were like 25 or 50 cents, and a lot of nice gems in them. And they could do that, and they could go around and look at different displays and stuff. And I think to this day, when I run into some of these kids and they're in their 30s, I still have my grab bag. I still have my rocks from my grab bag. So, yeah.
Lasting impressions. That's amazing.
It was. And to have been a part of that, that's where your reward as a teacher comes from.
But it was your teachers that influenced you to become a teacher.
It sure was.
It just carries on.
I also had teachers in my family too. It was a profession in our family, and then having wonderful teachers. I mean, all of that influenced me.
Right here in the Caldwell County school system.
Yes, ma'am.
That's amazing.
I've never found anywhere better than Caldwell County, or anywhere that I felt like I'd be satisfied living.
Okay.
Well, District 9 was made up of the 9 black districts out in the county, 9 communities, because and this is the history I've gotten from my parents and my older sisters who attended segregated schools. What the county decided to do was, each little community, black community, had their own schools.
Right.
Doulatown, Bushtown, Harpertown, they all had their own schools. Now, the cities, the neighborhoods in the cities, such as West End and Freedman, had their own schools. But what they decided to do, and I believe it was 1956, they combined all of the black schools that were out in the county into one school. And there were 9 of them. That's how they got the name District 9. And they actually built a new school out in Doulatown on land that some of my relatives owned. It was considered a modern building for the time, because most of the kids had gone to 2-room schools, and they bused them all there. And that meant if you were black and you lived in Granite Falls, you were bused to Doulatown. If you lived in Kings Creek, you rode a bus to Doulatown. It worked out okay for the Doulatown kids because they could walk.
Right.
They were right at home. But that was a long ride for a lot of kids. Now, to hear them talk about it, my sister said it was scary at first, because there were all these kids, and a lot of kids that you didn't know. But said at the same time, it was so nice to have that shiny new building and stuff, and I guess like anywhere else, they became close.
Right.
And when the schools desegregated, and that was in the fall of 1965, and I have no memory of this because I was a year old.
I was like, you were a year old.
I was a year old, and what they did, and I think Caldwell County had a pretty good plan. What they did when they integrated the schools, and the county schools integrated first. It was the city schools the next year. But they sent the kids to the schools they would have gone to if schools hadn't been segregated.
Right.
They just sent them there. Now, interestingly enough, that was the year they built High Brighton, because they combined Happy Valley, Kings Creek, and Oak Hill together and built High Brighton. But our family, the Doulatown kids, and my sister was a freshman in high school, so she went into Integrate Hudson High that year, which was probably the largest school in the county at that time. She said it was interesting, though, because they already knew a lot of the white children.
Right.
They had seen each other over the years, and Doulatown's a mixed neighborhood. Some of them had been our neighbors, but they'd never been allowed to go to school together. But to hear their stories of that first day and how that, a lot of interesting things there, and a lot of heartwarming stories too. But I can't imagine the fear of our parents, because my mom said they were told, put them on the bus and don't drive them to school, and that was scary. And they told our dads, when our dads went to work, just be close by in case we need to go and get them. And so my sister and our cousins in Doulatown were put on a bus, and one of our other cousins actually drove the bus to the elementary school to integrate those schools.
Right, because at that time students drove buses. That was not uncommon.
And they arrived at the school, but they said that Mr. Henry Lathan, who was at Hudson High forever, really good man, said he had explained to the community that he wasn't going to have any problems, that they really didn't. And the interesting thing there was to hear the stories from the athletes. And what most people didn't understand was, like, the football team had been meeting during the summer. Most of those guys knew each other. They had bonded together. They were happy to get the new players. So they were already established there. But I'm sure everybody wasn't nice, but they said there were a lot of nice kids there. And somehow they didn't have any problems. Which is amazing, because when you go back and you look at newsreels and places, it wasn't like that.
Right. I mean, we see the newsreels and you automatically think that there was at minimum tension, and worse. But I mean, it's good to hear that. And
I'm sure there was some tension, and here again, I can only tell about what went on at Whitnall Elementary and Hudson, and I'm getting that from my family, that they didn't have any problems. And one of my cousins was telling me, it was interesting, said when it came to Doulatown, there were, on the upper end, Whitnall sent 2 buses to pick up the kids. Our cousins that lived at the end of our road, they were put on one bus, and it went around by Fairview Drive, closer to where Google's at.
Right.
And the cousins on our end were put on another bus, and they went by Conley Springs Road and Clark's Chapel to Whitnall. But they said it was the quietest bus ride they had ever had in their lives. But my cousin Rocky Dula, who is now a minister, he was talking about when their bus, as they got close to Whitnall School, and they looked up on the playground, and that was a big school because there's probably 1,200 kids in it, and said you could see all the kids on the playground, and said when their bus came in sight, said there was like a hush. lights, and everything got really quiet as the bus was pulling in. And he said they stepped off of the bus, and they started up the famous ramp at Whitnall that we all walked up at one point, and said, and one little white boy held out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Rusty Craig. What's your name?" And he said he'll never forget that. And said they shook hands, and he told him his name was Rocky Doula, and said, but they became lifelong friends. You know, these are just stories you don't hear about on the news.
No,
there was a lot
don't.
of that going on. As for the high school, when you're going to do something big like that, the two groups that bring the school together are the musicians and the athletes. They're needed, and they did that, especially the football team at Hudson High that year. And they all came together because they wanted to beat Lenoir High.
That's a good reason.
Well, I think I've read newspaper articles that said Lenoir High had beaten them for 7 years straight. And so that particular year, now Lenoir High hadn't integrated that year, but they had a new set of coaches at Hudson. They had some new players and stuff. They said that night when they were to play Lenoir High, Hudson had a crowd of 5,000 people.
Wow.
And they beat Lenoir High by the largest margin they had ever at that point. But, you know, things like that brings the school and it brings the community together.
And the fact that the football team was already practicing together. I imagine the cheerleaders are already practicing together. You know, some of those fall sports.
Yeah, well, I know the football team.
Right.
And most of my cousins played football because, you know, out in Doulatown, at that time, you didn't have a lot of basketball players because you had baseball and football. We had fields, and that's what they played. And most of the guys played football, and they were very good at it.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, and the musicians, likewise, they had to get together to practice.
Exactly. And you have a common goal there, too. But those are the people that are really needed when there's a change like that.
And that's true today when we open a new school and they draw new lines.
Now, interestingly enough, the next year, the schools within the city of Lenoir integrated, and they had some issues.
I think it's just because the county people get along better.
Yeah. Well, you're dealing mostly with country people, and it's a different mindset, too. And, I mean, I don't know what those kids faced in the city of Lenoir when I don't know, but they had some issues. And
I'm just grateful that out in the county that the kids came together.
And I'm thankful that there was someone to go ahead of me, because when I went to school, started school in the fall of 1970, I mean, all that had been done 5 years, and all I had to think about, I was just excited about getting to ride that big yellow bus to school. I was so excited about that, and just going to school. So thankfully, that was
the opportunity to meet some new people.
Met some new people, and I was excited all of about 10 minutes after I arrived there, and my mom followed the bus to the school to, you know, and when she came, I decided I'd go back home that day.
Well, you know, on your first day, about 5 minutes isn't
She told me in the car, she said, now tomorrow when you come, you've got to stay. But my biggest thing was I wanted to ride that bus. Had gone by our house all those years, and would wave at the school kids and stuff. And I wanted to be on that bus, and I got to ride on it. And after that, after I arrived at school, it was like, okay, well, I've done that. Now I'm ready to go back home.
You know, I think that's common among kids. The bus is fascinating, but the whole school experience that first time may not be.
I was lucky too. I had older cousins there to look after me because it was a K-8 school, and the 8th graders, of course, they looked like adults to us.
Right.
And they looked after the younger kids.
That K-8 environment is really a special environment.
It is.
I always will argue that is just a really good, it's a good way to grow up.
It is. I mean, I can see in some ways where you might want to, 7th and 8th graders and 6th, start getting them geared towards high school, because we were kind of babied, and when I had to go to a middle school in 8th grade, it was cultural shock. I mean, I made it, but still, it was so
I will
different.
say, as a K-8 student, making that transition to high school was very much shock.
Well, my brother had to go from 8th grade at Whitnall into the first year of West Caldwell that it was open. Ooh. So he at 9th grade. Yeah, they really had a big transition. I did have 1 year of middle school to kind of get adjusted before the big change. So
yes, that big change is something else.
And then you meet all these people, students from all over, and I mean, it's interesting and it's fascinating and it's scary. And for us, we had only been around our cousins. Well, you're thinking, well, I'm in a school now where there's people that aren't kin to me. Well, I might be able to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Here, there's someone I can like.
Yes, when you're surrounded by cousins, it's a little hard to find someone.
They're off limits.
Yes. That's true. That's very true. So that change in scenery really helped.
It did.
Kelly, thank you for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
I've had a lot of fun and learned a whole lot.
I mean, like I said, I've enjoyed it.
So thank you very much. And thank you for watching Caldwell County Today.